Okay, we are now live.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome everyone to the March 24th, 2021 City of Asheville Multimodal Transportation Commission meeting. My name is Dennis Wenzel and I'm the chair of this group. Our meetings are being held virtually for the time being, but we do have multiple ways for you to participate in this gathering. You can watch us live through the City of Asheville YouTube channel or via our engagement portal. You can listen live by calling into our audio feed. Public comment can be submitted both through voicemail and email through special meeting links. And all of these details, including the links and the phone numbers and the codes and all the good information, can be found at the Multimodal Transportation Commission page of the City of Asheville website. Visiting that page is the best way to participate in this meeting. Members, staff, and guests, please remember to keep your microphones muted at all times when you're not speaking so we can minimize feedback and other background noises. I would now like to welcome our commission members. Members, if you could please introduce yourself and let us know which group you represent when I call your name. Let's start with Randy Warren.
I'm Randy Warren, and I'm on the Bike Ped Task Force.
Hey, Randy. Michael Stratton.
Hi, Michael Stratton. I'm currently at large, and I kind of cycle through.
Hey, Michael. Kenny Armstrong.
Hey, I'm Kenny Armstrong. I'm on the Greenway Committee as well.
Pat Katz.
I'm at large. Hello.
Hello. Welcome, Pat. Lydia, I believe, is out today with a family issue. Michael Waddell.
Michael Waddle with the Transit Committee as well. Thanks.
Hey, Michael. John.
I am John Bassone, and I represent the Transit Committee.
Maggie.
Hey, everybody. Maggie here. I think I'm at large.
Excellent. And Anna Sexton.
Hi, Anna Sexton here, and I am the Neighborhood Advisory Committee liaison to the Multimodal Transportation Commission.
Hey, Anna. Joe Archibald?
Yes, Joe Archibald. I am the Planning and Zoning Commission liaison to Multimodal.
Hey, Joe. And Kim Rooney. Looks like Kim may not have been able to join us yet. She'll probably join in a little bit. All right. The next order of business is we're going to review and approve today's agenda, the March 24th, 2021 agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Maggie. I have a motion to approve.
Thank you, Maggie. And a second?
This is Randy. I'll second.
Excellent. I got a motion and a second. And I'm moving screens here. I'll do a quick roll call. Randy?
Aye.
Michael Stratton.
Hi.
Kenny?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Michael Waddle?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Maggie?
Aye.
And I vote in favor as well. Motion carries. Okay. The next order of business are the minutes from our February 24th, 2021 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
I got a motion from Pat. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All right. I got a motion and a second. And we'll do a roll call again. Maggie?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Michael Waddle? I think we got a thumbs up from you. Is that aye? There we go. Pat?
Aye.
Kenny?
Aye.
Michael Stratton?
Aye.
Randy Warren?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Excellent. Moving on to public comment. We don't have any live public commenters at this point, but we did receive several comments via the email path, and I'm going to kind of go through and summarize those. You should all have those in your email boxes now. We've received, I think, 6 or 7 in total, kind of addressing a couple of issues. The first person, Gaia, talked about the challenges that she is facing. She actually had a horrendous accident at the corner of Merriman and Chestnut, and she kind of details her experience with that and how it's just really a challenge. It's frustrating. I think some of the things that we talk about, and I think that's why we're looking at that corridor as well. And so what she talks about is just the danger of pedestrians, a lot of things that we talk about a lot of the time. So if you can kind of read through those comments, understand that. But also what I'd like to do is maybe in the response to this comment, I know at some point we had talked about having the rework of Merriman Avenue on our agenda. Is that something that's heading our way soon?
I was going to give an update during staff updates about that today.
Okay, great. And is there was rumor floating around that there might be a presentation that NC DOT is giving. Is that a possibility for us to get that as well?
There is no presentation that
Okay.
I'm aware of. I'm not sure where that came from.
Okay. So once we get that, if there's anything, I know that at some point we had talked about it. So if we can just make sure that, once that goes through, I know you're keeping an eye on it, so we can just make sure we it comes through us as well, so we can, stay up to date and try to provide as much input as possible to make that as best as possible to avoid situations just like this. Then we had a couple of more comments. There were 3 folks, let's see, 3 Shiloh residents, Jillian Wolf, Chris Kirby, and Carter Cork all talked about some of the frustrations with not having sidewalks, people having to walk kids and dogs and children and strollers and all that kind of stuff on the street with fast moving traffic. And, I think this is something that we talk about a lot. And I think it's clear that this is not just one neighborhood or the other neighborhood. It's really the entire city where we're having this problem. And I was wondering if there's a way that we can revisit. I know that there's a sidewalk gap analysis that we work on, a sidewalk plan. And since I've been on this group, that hasn't come through. Is there a way we can kind of go through and revisit that plan at some point in the future, so we can understand what those priorities are, how that scoring measures work, so these people can also provide some other comment and input, just to make sure that we're getting all of these projects considered?
Mm-hmm. Lucy's giving an update on the gap plan today, and then we're going to have a much more thorough presentation on it, and including public comment that's been received, and the scoring and all of those things. I don't know if it'll be at our next meeting or the meeting after, but it'll be very soon.
Okay. I know that there's some money that's coming in, and it seems like, in the comments we had, these handful of half a dozen comments that we came in, and they're really talking about a lot of the same things, just, safety of pedestrians. So whenever we can redirect some of that, those funds to these plans that we already have in place, with the sidewalk plan, that'd be great. The last comment came in from Constance Cantrell, a West Asheville resident, expressing frustrations for much of the same thing. Specifically to her comment was addressing a new development where a bunch of houses were built and no sidewalks were put in. Is there a way we can, I think it feels like sometimes we're chasing our tail a little bit here, where there's new development, more people come in, density of residents increases, but we don't provide for those services, non-vehicle services, so we can move these folks safely around our neighborhoods as we build the density in these neighborhoods. Do we currently have a plan right now when a new house or a new apartment complex or a commercial building goes in? Do we have a plan that's built into that process? So right from the get-go, there's some consideration being put in for non-vehicular traffic?
Dennis, this is Ken Putnam, the director of the Transportation Department, and I can answer that one for you.
Oh, great. Thank you, Ken.
According to the UDO, any single-family residential community that has more than 20 houses, sidewalks are required. And what we've seen on quite a few, in the last year or so, quite a few subdivisions have come forward with 19 or less homes.
Okay, and so it's only when it's a group of 20 homes. So if a single home is put in, there isn't an allowance for a sidewalk or a requirement?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, Michael? We can't hear you.
Yeah, so there are a lot of pocket neighborhoods that are going into Asheville. I live in Oakley, and they're sporadic. They're all over the neighborhood. Typically, they're 3 or 4 at a time. So Stoner Road's a really great example where there's, I think, 3 brand new single-family residences that are put in. Small lots. I think they're like 4,000 square feet, the minimum for RS8. My question is, has this policy always been 20 houses, or was this finagled with during the last recession? It was my understanding that that 20 number might have been smaller. Is that accurate, or?
Michael, this is Ken Putnam again. As far as I know, I've been here going on 15 years, and that requirement has always been more than 20. What you're talking about, though, is a very good point. That's what I term the infill development that we're seeing all over Asheville, and we're seeing lots that are being subdivided and then homes squeezed in. So that's one of the, I guess, unintended consequences that we're beginning to see with the infill development. Another one that I'm familiar with on the infill development, because it requires a modification, several times these housing units will require a second driveway along the same property frontage, whereas right now a single family home can only have one driveway along the street frontage. But then if they were to add like an accessory dwelling unit or something like that, many times they want to have a second driveway. So we're beginning to see more driveways pop up as well with this infill development thing that we're going through right now.
So just a general follow-up to that question, 20, again, just seems really excessive before we start to see sidewalks put into neighborhoods, especially considering that most of the development right now is not giant subdivisions. It's these little ones. So what's the process for getting this number changed down to, let's say, 2 or 3?
Well, the process would require a change in the UDO, because that's where the policy is on that. This is not a standard specifications or details. This is not an engineering standard. This is a policy, and that's what the UDO is. So that's what that would take.
Would we have to overhaul the whole UDO at once, or is that something we can do piecemeal?
No, it's looked at in different sections.
Okay.
I know that I think within this year that we've had, there's been at least 1, maybe 2 city council meetings where some changes to the UDO have come forward.
Well, that's great news, because that means that we can start a dialogue on that. I would love to see some more information on that, to where we as a council, or not a council, but as a commission could make a recommendation to lower that number. Is it possible, Dennis or Jessica, that could be an agenda item that we could have a little bit more of a discussion about how that number was reached and what it would take to get that changed? Because I run a lot. I run 20 miles sometimes as an active runner, and I see this all over town, and it blows me away that you can just see these really primo destinations, tops of mountains and all over places, and they're just, obviously there's a profit margin there. They could probably afford this. I don't understand why it needs to be 20.
Yeah, I agree, Michael. I feel like every person that I talk to, every resident wants access to a sidewalk. And so I think it makes sense that we maybe prioritize residents and the people who will be living in those neighborhoods for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years over that short-term build, issue that we might have to overcome. So, I would love to see if we can get this added and figure out, define a path. If it's, I'm comfortable even discussing down to 1 house. If you start building these little sections as we go, eventually then our overall sidewalk plan can come back and say, if there's 50% of the sidewalk being built already by development, we only have to go back and infill another 50% through city money and tax money. And so that there's a way that we can kind of, skin this cat both ways, just to move it forward as quickly as possible. John? I'm sorry.
Sorry. I was going to say, one, like, Joe, I know you're on P&Z, and I would love to hear your thoughts, just with being steeped in the UDO in a way that I don't think any of us are. And before that, I'd want to say, this is a really cool idea. 20 sounds like that makes sense from a very different development era of our community. And so revisiting that conversation feels good. And what might come off like a wet blanket, but a counter voice of like, I hear a lot of optimism, and this would be a very difficult conversation, and we shouldn't veer away from things that are difficult. But a counter argument would be that this public service, which government is here to do, would go on to the back of new home buyers. People won't really like hearing that. Now, I say that so that we can be very thoughtful in pursuing a conversation, because I think 20 doesn't feel right. But I wanted to put that counterbalance out there so we're all at the same place going, oh yeah, that's a counter argument. So what do we need to think about to start chugging towards this, so we have kind of the vision and the dream, which I hear from you all and I share, and a reality of teammates we'd have to work with.
John?
So the thing I was going to ask is, some of these roads in town are really narrow, and how are those taken into account? Because is there enough room to even put sidewalks in some of these neighborhoods? If it's required, what does that mean for, is it safe to put a sidewalk? One of the reasons I got involved in this, on this commission, I noticed when I first moved to town that there were people waiting for buses where there weren't sidewalks, and I was blown away to see that people were waiting for a bus where there was no shelter and no sidewalk. And I just couldn't believe it. Some of those places have sidewalks now. One of the places that I'm referring to is on Wood Avenue over there in Oakley. But I remember seeing that and just, I couldn't believe it. So I'm a huge proponent for sidewalks, but safety is also paramount as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. I like the idea of maybe, argument could be made where we have a requirement and then we make exceptions to that requirement. And it might be for whatever reason we can't do it. But I feel like, what if we thought about erring on the side of, let's put a sidewalk in and then figure out how we can do that versus, talking ourselves out of it before we require it.
So how about this? Well, I will talk to planning and urban design staff and/or DSD, Development Services Department staff, to see who might be able to come to a future meeting to give us an overview of the existing Unified Development Ordinance as it relates to sidewalks, because there are a lot of different pieces of it, including different requirements for multifamily, for commercial, different requirements for the type of sidewalk depending on the zoning. And so I think it's good to have a full perspective of all the various requirements. And this is something that we struggle with as well, especially when we have such an issue with affordability that requiring sidewalks for single family homes can become problematic. But at the same time, if you don't, then you have these pockets where you're missing facilities, and so it very quickly becomes a complicated situation. There's also different requirements that I think we need to readdress, related to if a commercial development is renovating an existing structure, but they only spend a certain amount of money on the renovation, then it does or doesn't kick in whether or not they have to bring certain infrastructure into compliance. So you see a lot of issues where you get a new restaurant comes in where another restaurant used to be, and they might renovate that space, but they're not required to bring anything up to compliance. So there's all these little pieces that we are looking at and have wanted to work on as part of the UDO, and have been kind of in a holding pattern trying to figure out what the UDO update, when that might happen and how that might happen. And it sounds like likely it will be done sort of in a piecemeal fashion. And this is one of the areas that's in, I think, great need of review and update.
Good. Yeah, I think that's good discussion. And also, I just wanted to thank the, sorry. Yes, somebody has a question? Is it?
Hey, Dennis, this is Joe. I was just going to do like this super quick as I can. Since Maggie said something. One, yes, you have opened Pandora's box when you talk about the UDO and sidewalks. And as Jessica just gave the brief rundown, I mean, there are sidewalk regulations for every single different type of development, essentially. Two, when you start talking about sidewalks and single family residential, you will be essentially battling the biggest black bear you've ever faced. I mean, that will just be warning, that's going to be huge because three, that directly affects prices of housing. And if anybody has done anything or even set foot in a building center parking lot lately, you will know that building prices are just skyrocketing. So I am completely on board with changes. I have certainly been advocating for them at the commercial level. Classic example from what Jessica was just talking about with commercial is the old Dairy Queen on Tunnel Road, kind of across from the Ingalls, got transformed about 2 years ago into an enterprise car rental. They didn't meet the requirement of 50% cost to upgrade, so they didn't have to put in a sidewalk. So again, missing chunk of sidewalk. So as far as, each individual person here could, advocate to city council to get the UDO changed, because it is something that has been on planning's radar for a while. I keep pushing for it. Trying to wholesale change and rework the UDO is just onerous. I think it's going to have to be piecemeal, but there's probably 25 things that are priority one. So it's also one of those, you can't just change like 3 lines of text. You're changing 3 here and 4 there and 6 there and multiple pages and how it ties in. So it really almost needs to be a wholesale reworking of the entire document, which again is huge. So
okay, yeah, duly no. I think it is going to be a challenge, but it's something where I feel like it's almost the next step for us, because we're not seeing 20 home developments around as much anymore. So what can we do to better, and maybe it's just a grading. There's not an installation, so it's just a grading. So when we do go through, the city can more quickly and more efficiently, lay that sidewalk in there, something like that. Maggie, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah. The thought that came to mind just of listening to this conversation is, first I was just being like really inspired and excited about like what we can do together and wanting to like find something awesome. And wondering, I know that that we've talked about having a retreat at some point, and part of me wonders if the UDO is the conversation for us, and sidewalks at single family home or at 3 single family homes is one element. Like, to me, I see that the specific idea we're talking about has so much technical stuff behind it that like, I don't even know what the technical stuff is, that I can't even have an opinion today. But I would love us to like get prepared to have a conversation of what would our top UDO revision priorities be? And this could be one of them, but I don't know. I haven't done that. I haven't seen that staff report yet, or I haven't seen that policy work yet. That I wonder if instead of just adding this as one agenda at a time, we could look a little bigger picture and take a little more time doing some homework to see there might be other things, just as this cool idea came up in conversation today. But if we ask staff to help us with that homework, we might be able to really hit on something bigger within the UDO, or at least we could compare priorities.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know there's discussion about our retreat that, hopefully that happens soon. Hopefully we'll be able to even do things in person potentially. Who knows? But I think that's a great idea. I love that idea. So maybe we can, work with Jessica to see if we can get that and understand maybe the pieces that are around that as well, so we can have kind of a cohesive, larger focused effort on, half a dozen items that really will help us migrate into our kind of the next set of terms or next set of focus that we should have. Joe?
Real quick, just to comment about what you just mentioned, Maggie. Yes, there are probably several areas of the UDO that what multimodal deals with in scope would be good to look at. I would say sidewalks is certainly like one of the big ones for sure. I did want to make a comment about some of the public comments. And I know Jessica mentioned that Lucy's going to talk about sidewalks. This is specific to the people that commented about Shiloh. I looked up in the list of projects, and a sidewalk along West Chapel to Shiloh is in the planning stages. So just as a FYI, if any of those people are listening, I don't know if that's correct, but that's what that's what was in the meeting packet. And then to the person who had the incident on Merriman and Chestnut, I have not of late walked through that intersection much, but it is an intersection that I frequently go through, and it is a very bad one. I will say that it is one of those that is on the list of when we do the bike pedestrian counts. That one is on there. I did that the last time we did bike ped counts, and certainly bike ped counts were up in that area. So hopefully that will generate some more interest in that. So again, apologize that person had a extremely bad experience there, but know that we are trying to do what we can, even though it does seem very slow and plodding at times.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Joe. Michael?
I just had a question about how these comments are coming in. They're presented to us in text format. Did they come in all via email, or did any of these come in as a audio format?
Michael, they come in both ways.
I would like to go on the record as just requesting that anything comes in as an audio that be played as an audio. I know that for the interest of time that we try to rush through this, but some of these, when you read through them and read the detail of the experience of these people being struck by cars in our city, it's grotesque. I mean, there's a lot to it. And Dennis, it's nothing against your synopsis of it at all. I think you hit the points, but I think we're missing some emotion, and it's particularly now that we're not actually meeting in person. I think it's important that we get some of that emotion to the table, and we can do that through the form of a video or audio.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, I think that's we certainly want to make sure the passion of our commenters is conveyed, and I certainly look forward to a time when we can again be face to face and we can really hear from them exactly. That you read the comments, and it's horrible what happened to Gaia, and it's something that I think that we can work towards resolving as soon as possible. John, sorry.
So while we're on the topic of public comment, I don't know if anybody else received an email, but I received an email from Mike Sewell from Asheville on bikes. And he is concerned that the Merriman project, that it's not getting enough discussion. And he's interested in us engaging the community in a dialogue to discuss the possibility of a road diet similar to what they did on Charlotte Street. He also encouraged me to read the comments about Merriman on Asheville on Bike's website. So I thought I should definitely put that out there, because we did kind of run past the Merriman. I think we discussed it briefly. I can't remember if it was January or February, but I guess it was supposed to be on the agenda in February, and then it was taken off. So,
yeah, John, you're right. What happened is it wasn't fully baked for us, and so it came off the agenda. But I think Jessica said that it's going to be back on potentially our next meeting. Does that sound right?
Well, I was going to give an update on Merriman during our staff updates, but I guess I can go ahead and do that now. So we took it off the agenda at our previously because the administration wanted to have some additional conversations with NCDOT about the project and the, in particular, the timing of what they're going to be doing, which is mostly a resurfacing project. Resurfacing projects include improvements to ADA curb ramps and things like that, but it's not a reconstruction of the street. And NCDOT has told us that they're unable to implement a road diet on Merriman as part of a resurfacing project. And there's several reasons that they feel that way. The primary one, I think, being that the timing, which they're expecting to be doing the resurfacing sometime, I think, either later this year or early 2022, they feel that a significant amount of public input and feedback needs to be, and engagement needs to happen for a route such as this, given that it's a U.S. highway, given that it's one of our higher volume routes. And so they also feel that there hasn't been any analysis done on whether or not this would work from a level of service and safety perspective at the volume levels that we have on Merriman. So they've indicated to the city that they are not able to consider a road diet as part of this project. And therefore, after conversations with them about this and the I guess the logistics of trying to do some kind of public outreach process, the city feels like it's just too much of a heavy lift, despite how much the city wants to see this happen. We feel that right now the best approach is to continue to work with them. They are doing an analysis right now of the interchange at 240, because one of their ideas is that in order for a road diet to work, they feel that some of the vehicular traffic would need to be diverted to Broadway just to make the function okay. And so they're doing an analysis of that right now. And I'm not sure exactly when that'll be completed, but taking it step by step with them is the city's recommended approach right now, and not trying to force them into taking something on that very likely would be a very big public engagement effort in a time frame that's not conducive to having that go very well. We're also just really trying to, and I know this will sound kind of like a cop out, and let me preface it by saying, like, the city would recommend that a road diet take place. It's in alignment with our principles and our goals. We feel that it would be a safer situation for all users. However, we recognize that it's not our road. It's a U.S. highway. It is kind of right on the limit of what would normally be acceptable for a road diet in terms of traffic volumes. And we haven't done any public engagement. If you think about all the public engagement that we did for Charlotte Street, this would have to be much more substantial. I forget where I was going with this, but if we had it under our control, that would be our preference. But we also recognize that we have to work with DOT. They've been doing a lot of positive things for us lately, which I can go more into in staff updates. But on the balance, we just don't feel comfortable trying to push it with them right now on this particular project.
Randy?
Yes, so I think we talked about this in the bike ped task force, and so Hannah Cook gave a presentation or update on Merriman at the bike ped task force, and it was her impression that she was meeting with the city. And well, just backtrack for a second. We all know the disaster, I think, of what the initial plans were for and reconstruction of several intersections on Merriman, 2 years ago or so. And then how public came into that process and strongly disagreed with what the plans were going to be. And so I guess the thought was of bike ped, at least, and certainly Asheville on bikes, was that then when NCDOT went forward with anything else, they would do a better job at reaching out to the people of Asheville. so that they wouldn't have that happen again. And Hannah seemed to think that they were doing that through their conversations with the city. Yet, MMTC is not on their list of people to reach out to, groups to reach out to get that kind of buy-in and cooperation when they move forward with the next project. They felt like NCDOT felt like they were doing all the right things by just talking to the city. But as we saw last time, that's not really, they need to do some kind of public engagement. If it's through MMTC, which is a public body that's helping to advise the city council, or some other means, right now they're not doing anything. And yet they think they are by just talking to city staff. So that was a real concern, that they're not getting public input on anything that they're doing right now. And it looks like to the public, maybe they're just going to steamroll it through like they tried to do last time. And it was through a huge public and city outreach, reach that they stopped that process. So that was just the concern of Asheville on Bikes and the Bike Ped Task Force, is that that NCDOT really isn't reaching out to anybody but the city, and that's, we saw last time, wasn't enough.
Michael? Or sorry, Jessica, do you have any comment there, or you're going to hold off to the? Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So just listening to this, we literally were just talking about density on a different topic, about how we're going to put as many houses as possible into all the nooks and crannies across the town, the city. And that's only going to increase the amount of flow to these major arteries. And to have that conversation and think about like, oh, well, let's just go ahead and resurface this road without, I don't know. It makes me a little hot. There are places in town that are state roads that we can all agree on that need to be fixed immediately. For example, Meadow Road, let's fix that now. We can all agree that needs to be fixed. Why are we resurfacing a road on Merriman only to come back and completely tear it back up after we've had the time and effort to think about what we want to do? Why don't we put that on hold for a minute and think about this and think about how it aligns with our density, city initiative. And I don't know, it just seems really wasteful, redundant, and just a bad way to go about things.
Maggie?
A lot of my teammates have said sentiments that I share, so I'll try and be brief. Their lack of public engagement should not be our problem. It feels like I don't love hearing that as a commissioner. Like what I hear is it's going to take a lot of time, and we don't want to do that, and that does not feel good. And I don't think that would feel like, I am a block from Merriman Avenue. I'm repeatedly at that intersection where Gaia was hit by a car and is daily experiencing traumatic living issues because of it. Like, I'm sorry, they don't have time to come and talk to us is not really okay with me.
Kenny?
Yeah, I'll echo all that too. The status quo is not working, so why don't they need public input to keep the status quo what it is? And everybody seems to be on the same page that there needs to be improvements, and road resurfacing doesn't happen all that often, so it seems like a great opportunity to say, look, we're going to resurface it, let's get some input. And if that means that they got to put it off for another year, I don't, is anybody concerned with that? Like, let's spend a year doing public input, and why keep it in the design that it is now if everybody, including the city and their staff, seem to be unhappy with it? So make them do the public input to prove that keeping it the way it is the right idea.
Thanks, Kenny. John?
I actually echo what Kenny just said. So I think that putting it off it's definitely worth a conversation because it is such a busy road and because it is a state road. I've lived in other cities where just because it's a state road doesn't mean it's not eligible for a road diet. Those two things it doesn't make sense to me. So I just think that it's an opportunity to imagine something that could be really are really great for the community. So I think it's worth putting on hold, and we should pursue that.
Thanks, John. Yeah, I feel like some of the anxiety or frustration, whatever it is that we're feeling as a group, is because this neighborhood, I feel like we're very close to getting them to where we want them, where they're out of their cars, they're making walking trips, biking trips, and we're so close. We just need to make it safe for them. And I think we can get over that hump for a neighborhood, and then we can do another neighborhood and another one. But I feel like we're just missing an opportunity here, and I'm not sure what, where it is, but something seems missing to me. So, I don't know what makes sense, but, John, Michael.
Hi, yeah. First of all, I agree with everybody. Public input is necessary to do a project like this. I don't know how these mechanisms work, though, and so I just want to be sure by delaying, I don't know, if we were able to delay a project, it doesn't threaten the project or its funding or how that works, because my experience with projects is don't spend the money, it's not necessarily isn't coming back. It could be even that delaying it for a year could delay it by 5 years. I don't know how these things work necessarily, but I just wanted to put that out there too.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, what's your sense? Do you feel like we have a disconnect between us and NCDOT on this, or what's your sense for how to best move forward here?
Well, it's tough because I do think that there is a lot of progress that's been made with NCDOT in general on the city's concerns over the last several years. I see them making efforts, big efforts, I would say, in a lot of project areas. For example, they're going to be working with us on Haywood Road resurfacing, which is going to include a lot of pedestrian improvements. They're currently working with us right now to address the pedestrian crossing issues on Amboy Road Bridge. They are going to be resurfacing Meadow Road and doing bike facilities on Meadow Road. And so it's simultaneously we get some really positive outcomes in our discussions and our working with them. And then on big projects like this, it's been not that I don't think it's because they don't want to do it or that they don't take it seriously. I think it's, in this case, unfortunately for them, more of a logistical issue and a financial issue. I believe the project was already contracted out. When they do resurfacing projects, they tend to bundle them. So they'll bundle like 3 or 4 major projects into one, bid it out, and then that contractor who's awarded that project has the discretion as to which one they want to tackle first. And so they don't really know exactly the timing of when each individual one will move forward. And so in some ways it's like the ship has sailed for them, and that's frustrating, I think, for the city, because we would have preferred to have more discussion way ahead of time about this before it was put on their books. And I don't know if Ken is still here. I think Kathy also joined, and they may wish to speak more on it. So there are still disconnects, I think, between what the city wants and what NCDOT has to do or feels that they have to do. I'm hoping that we can make some progress on Merriman. And, the frustrating thing for me is that projects, like somebody said, they only come up every 10 years or so. And so it's like one end of the spectrum is like you're rushing and you don't have enough time to do what you want. And then, or you're waiting for another 2 decades. And I wish there was like an in between. And that's where we're at with Merriman, I think.
Okay. Anna?
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Jessica, for the update. And I I agree much with what everyone else has already said, but what did come to mind when you were just providing your update, Jessica, was, is there some sort of happy medium that we could somehow come to with NCDOT where it's something between, the most amazing sort of redesign of road diet that the public would like to see for that corridor, and just sort of a very generic resurfacing where, and maybe this is already part of the conversation, but where we're talking about like updating signals and signal timing and maybe new technology at crosswalks and better crosswalks, and looking at some elements of what might be incorporated into a really great future redesign, but just getting some really immediate like pieces in place when they take this project on.
Yeah, there could be some opportunity for that. I do know as a separate project, they're going to be installing a overhead pedestrian, it's called a pedestrian hybrid beacon at Merriman and Spears. And that project is moving forward and should be, I think, started probably in the next couple of months. And so there's like the big project, and then there's opportunities that we continue to work with them on these spot improvements. And to the extent that there might be funding in their resurfacing to make some additional spot improvements, we'll certainly talk with them about that. And again, as part of any resurfacing, they are required to make ADA improvements. So at the very least, we will see improvements to the curb ramps and such, but it's not, it's unfortunately not an opportunity to do much more than that. But I'm happy at least we'll be getting that.
Michael. Oh, sorry, please.
No, that's okay. It just, so I'm in West Asheville, right off of State Street, where the new RRFB is in place, and I don't know how much of all of that was tied to just like general resurfacing or what, but there wasn't really any sort of redesign of the road. There was some, like you said, spot improvements, adding that crosswalk in, and it has made that corridor for me as a pedestrian and runner feel so much more safe. Even adding center lines in the road and some like demarcated parking spaces on the west side of the road, it's done a lot, I think, to slow traffic down there. So I know Merriman is a totally different animal, but looking at, some spot improvements like that context, I think would be amazing if we can't get anything else.
Michael Waddle? Oh, sorry, I saw your hand raised there. Michael Stratton.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, is there a mechanism that a city can request a delay on a project like this at the state level? Because if so, I would like to advocate for that. I'd even put a motion on the table to do that, because what I'm hearing is they're going to do this resurfacing and then they're going to tell us we're good for the next 10 years. And I don't want to wait 10 years to have this fixed. That's a long time.
Maggie?
Thanks. Michael, your sentiment of like not wanting to wait a long time, I share. And I guess I just kind of want to express a point that I feel a little confused about in this explanation of like the amount of public input that happened in 2008, although it was around a specific intersection, I think could very easily be extrapolated to the community's response. And the fact that this has now snuck up on us 3 short years later is like, something about that story doesn't feel like that makes sense to me, where unless they just completely didn't listen to a single word a citizen said in 2018, how they would like it just feels like they're sneaking in. Oh, we don't have time now. It's like, well, we actually told you a lot about what we want in 2018. And then I just want to acknowledge, like, I get it that the city is in a really challenging triangle. When I was at the city relating to the utility and to citizens, like, I get that is a very hard thing to do. And I understand we have to manage our relationships because DOT has a lot more power and money than we do, right? So we need to figure out how our relationship is positive, and sometimes pushing too far is challenging. So I just want to like name that and be like, staff, I'm sure this isn't easy. Thank you. And y'all were part of the 2018 conversations too. Like, how did this sneak up on us? What's going on? I just don't understand how we're all going like, oh, time's up. And it's like, then what was the exhausting amount of input that we labored over in 2018 for? Because I'm not going to believe that y'all chose to ignore us. That's just not something I don't believe it. So I just am confused about how we're here.
Ken, did you have some comment?
Yes, I do. I just want to add a couple things. First of all, as far as the project that happened back in 2018 and this one, they're entirely two different projects. The one in 2018 was a part of the State Transportation Improvement Program, so that was more or less construction related. What the DOT is basically doing here is just a maintenance related project. It's in their resurfacing program. So as far as the money goes, they're entirely different pots of money for the different projects. And typically on their resurfacing projects, and they do these every single year and all over the state, but they bundle a whole bunch of projects together. And one of the newer things that they've been doing for the last 2 or 3 years is they've actually been letting the projects and giving a contractor almost 2 years to complete his bundle of projects. So like, for example, some of the projects that they maybe already let and in the contractor's hands may not be done for another almost 2 years. And they've tried to do that to try to get a contractor committed to a project so that the work will get done, and also to try to hold the prices down as well. But that's so it's not like this project snuck up on us or we didn't get public input. We typically don't have public input in one of their maintenance related projects like resurfacing. What city staff did when we became aware of the project was just ask the question if we could consider the road diet on behalf of the Multimodal Transportation Commission and others. And this is the answer that we got, that they really can't put it into this bundle of projects. But ever since 2018, and that other project was shelved, we'll say, they have been working to try to see what we can do on the Merriman Corridor. And then the COVID event hit and some of their work got delayed. But the project is still moving forward and all to try to change what it looks like right there near I-240 so that we could be in a position to divert traffic off of Merriman Avenue when this can get moving forward. So they're still working towards that end. It's just on a different path than a resurfacing project.
So Ken, as I understand it, so the 2018 project kind of was shelved and then they assigned it to be resurfaced, or were those happening concurrently?
No, that's two different things. No,
so would they have resurfaced?
Just because the construction project was shelved had nothing to do with their maintenance related project to come up and resurface Merriman Avenue. It just turns out that now it's Merriman Avenue's turn to get resurfaced again.
Okay, so that wouldn't be part of this package.
Excuse me, right. I missed that, Dennis.
Sorry, if the 2018 project went through, it wouldn't have been a part of this resurfacing package at this time.
Well, yes, they would have done if that other project had gone through, that would have just been between up near UNCA in that immediate area. This resurfacing project goes from about Beaver Lake all the way down to I-240.
Okay. So we're talking about different sections, and that I'm trying to understand these pieces, and it seems like it started to get a little bit clearer.
Yeah, just for the benefit of those that are newer, of which we've got several new folks. there were 2 intersection improvements that were previously being proposed by NCDOT at the intersection of W.T. Weaver was one, and then I think the intersection just north of that. I can't remember exactly, but they were proposing to widen both of those intersections substantially, add turn lanes, and basically just make them a lot bigger. And the city and the public pretty forcefully said no. And those projects got tabled, and then they recently, just very recently, were removed from the State Transportation Improvement Program. And so that's what Maggie was referring to, the 2018 and the public input that was received during that time for those particular projects. And so this resurfacing, like Ken said, is, to them, it's a maintenance project. To us, it's more than that, right? And they recognize that in many ways, especially with the Haywood project that they're going to work with us on. Merriman has been a little more challenging.
Randy?
Yeah, so I don't think they understand that NCDOT doesn't understand that we're actually trying to help them in this way, because even though they think they're avoiding maybe having to go through a public input process, they're going to get it. If they resurface this and don't do a road diet or even talk about a road diet, I mean, the city now is doing Charlotte Street and the success of that, and people are seeing where we can go and where we want to go. And if they don't address it now in a public way and they resurface it and it's the same status quo, they're gonna hear it from the public in huge ways, and they're gonna be like, "What?" I think, and so I think, well, this is a service to them to try and help them to understand that they're out of touch in a way, and we're trying to help them in this process, because I don't think they get that.
Kathy, did you have a comment?
I do. Hey, I'm Kathy Ball. I'm one of the assistant city managers, and I work with Ken and Jessica, and have been involved in conversations with DOT about this issue. I want to first, I've heard a lot, and I don't want to repeat anything that's been said, but Ken mentioned that they are working on a project to connect Broadway to Broadway. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but if you think about Broadway on the north side and how it does not connect. So right now, Merriman serves as that US 25 connector for them. And in their world, that's a big deal. Like the fact that it has that designation. And y'all may have already talked about that, but then that restricts them even more on what they can do with a US highway. And it sounds very bureaucratic. It is very bureaucratic. We have crazy bureaucratic stuff like that as well, but it does limit some of the things that can be done. What they proposed to us, because we met with them and said, we want you to do this. We're going to keep pushing you to do this. So I did want you to know that we had the conversations with them, and they like Charlotte Street. You probably, I don't know if Jessica said our fire department loves it. We've gotten good response from our EMS folks. And so some of their problem comes from two things. One of them was the public engagement that you're talking about, but the other one was just that the thresholds of the counts they have fall over a X number. And if you fall over X number, you can only do X and you cannot do Y. You know what I mean? So they follow this rule book that we've learned over the past year. We've got to learn to rewrite, right? But they haven't yet figured out how to do that. And some things we haven't either. So here's my suggestion maybe is that we go back to them and say, we met and we have a multimodal commission that wants to continue to pursue this. And we think that it could end up like somebody just said, you're going to hear about it on the back end if you choose to not listen now, and give them a heads up that we have a lot of strong citizens that are active in this area that want to see this happen, and give them a chance to respond. So that would be, we're trying to do relationship building. We're trying to, we do have a different administration at DOT than we've had before. And regardless of what we all say, what we dealt with before was just impossible to deal with. And now that we have somebody that is there, we want to try to work with him. So let us meet with him. If you all want to have your chair in that meeting, so you can talk about how what the group said, and you can feel like there's representation from the Multimodal Commission, we would welcome that. But let's set up a meeting and have a conversation with them. And it's not scheduled until the summer, so it's not going to happen tomorrow. And we can get that on the books in the next week or two. And I'm offering that up just as a way to move forward and at least know that we have tried everything we can with conversation before we go the political route. Because I think what y'all are suggesting with a resolution and then taking that resolution to council, it's a way to go. But I'm wondering if there is a way to go where we can give them a heads up. This is what the Multimodal Commission is going to recommend if this doesn't happen, if there's still strong feelings, or maybe you all will learn something and we will learn something in that meeting. What do y'all think about that idea?
I think it's great. This is Dennis, by the way. I think it's great. I think, you're sensing a lot of passion, and I think we have a lot of passion. Yeah. What we're looking for is a workable solution. We really are, I think that sounds like a great path, and at least we can get some more information to make sure, the sense that I'm getting is that we're letting something slip out of our hands here. And if that's not what's, your team feels, then we obviously have faith that you're going to lead us down the right path. So that sounds like a good plan.
We have so much going on in this city, and we're trying to figure out what kind of, which hills we're going to, I shouldn't say this, but what things we're going to tackle. But if this group, y'all are empowered to be the group who speaks about multimodal. And if you feel like this is an issue that you want, feel strong enough about that you want to do this, then we want to help support you in that. But we want to do it in a way that is a conversation, and we don't just start with the arguments,
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. We want solutions and productive communication as well, for sure.
So let us know. Jessica can let me know, and then our office can set that meeting up with Mark Teague and his staff, and we can try to get that in the next week or two, and we can move forward if y'all think that's a good route.
That sounds good. That sounds great. Excellent. Thank you very much. Good SOS call here. Boy, I tell you what, we got some response. That's fantastic.
I think Maggie was going to say something. Hey, Maggie, I miss you. I want to do a big heart to Maggie.
As soon as and I appreciate you. I love hearing your suggestion. I think that's a lovely one. Michael, I appreciated you bringing the suggestion of what can we do? Can we do a resolution towards council? I think that's the spirit I feel and we all feel. And I think that the mechanism Kathy is suggesting gets us to a great spot, to just a little bit of a different mechanism building off of your idea. And again, just, this relationship building stuff is not easy. So I get that. But I think we are active, excited volunteers to build that relationship too. I'd love to be part of that meeting. So put me on the list of volunteers and hope others can join.
Okay. Yeah, let Jessica know who wants to be in that meeting, and we will happily set that up in the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all for your
Kathy.
volunteering. It's so good to see your faces, and I appreciate all you're doing. And hey, I love the passion. I'm passionate about what I do too. So thank you for being a part of it.
Kathy.
Sorry, Ken?
I saw in the chat where Michael had a question about expanding on the Metal Road resurfacing a little bit, and I'll be glad to do that, Michael. This section of Metal Road between the bridge that goes over the railroad track and back over to Amboy Road, it had what they call a friction course on top of it, which is a rougher surface to try to cut down on the slickness in that area. And it has been raveling off. If you've driven on it lately, it's just about gone. It's very rutted and everything. So we pointed it out to the DOT, and they have added it to their resurfacing program. And the other thing they're going to do at the same time, they're going to try their best to create paved shoulders as well that could serve as bike lanes. So it's just that section between that bridge and Amboy Road.
Great. Thank you, Kim. Anna, do you have your hand up? Oh, you're all set. Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Are we all set here? Excellent. Thank you. Well, a quick thank you to our commenters. If you had any question about whether your comments matter, I think the last 20 minutes demonstrated that we're willing to have a conversation, having the hard conversations too. So people that submit comments, that's really good. Get your friends, get your family. If you have other people that feel the same way, those comments come in here and they do make a difference. Our city and staff deal with a lot of really complicated and important issues every day, and it's our job to make sure that they understand that this is an important issue as well, and this is exactly how we do it. So thanks to everyone that made the comments. Okay, everybody good? We're clear. All right, new business. Back to the agenda. New business. So we have a presentation on the draft of the South Slope Vision Plan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sasha Vertunsky. I'm a planner here in planning and urban design, and I don't know most of you actually. Of course, I know Maggie Ullman very well, but and Joe on P&Z. But I'm a planner in long-range planning here on the 5th floor, and I'm going to. Sorry, we have been working on a South Slope Vision Plan for several years. And we're getting ready to roll it out to the public probably next month. And so this is a little bit of a preview for you all. I've also done a similar presentation to the South Slope Neighborhood Association. So you have my presentation. I'm promising not to read all the text on the slides, but you have it there. I'm going to share my screen. The computer's going very slow. I apologize. I'm not sure why. While I'm waiting for that to take effect, I don't know why it's taking so long.
Sasha, we might be able to share it from our end, possibly.
Sure. Yeah. I hate this because I have everything queued up, and
It's like the new slide.
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
I think it's starting.
Oh, well, I hung up and rejoined because I was getting impatient. But, okay.
Oh.
Here we go. So just while that's hopefully pulling up, the South Slope Vision Plan is really we embarked upon this because it's one of the innovation districts. It's saying I can't share my screen.
Amy, could you try pulling it up?
Yes.
Sure. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
And so really this area is the commercial areas in the southern part of our downtown, so south of Hilliard Avenue. It includes Aston Park and also the Mountainside Park and McCormick Field down to Choctaw. So this presentation really presents the main ideas of the plan. What it doesn't include is the public outreach we did. We did a studio down on Cox Avenue in the refinery building. And it also doesn't include the history of this area.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah, so Amy, if you can scroll up a little bit and or try to do one slide at a time. Thank you. Yeah. You could make it a little bigger if you want.
Okay.
So this is the South Slope, kind of an aerial view. Perfect. There we go. You can keep going, Amy, to the next slide. So this is just a 2D map showing that, about half of this area is zoned CBD, Central Business District, and the other parts south of the Central Business District are, office business, regional business, so they tend to be a little bit more suburban type zoning. You can keep going, Amy. And just as a note, the history of this area is really interesting. So this area was impacted by redlining for a number of years. The redlining maps, if you're familiar with what redlining is, loans were not made available to folks in this area. We very intentionally stayed out of residential neighborhoods, but so these are really business corridors that are very adjacent to like South French Broad, South Side, Oakhurst, and we're close to East End Valley Street, but not directly adjacent. So this is how the plan is organized. There are 5 main themes, and then we've got 10 key initiatives that we've kind of associated with each of those themes. You can keep going, Amy. So I'm going to try to be brief. You can keep going, Amy. So the first one is quality built environment. And basically, what we're trying to do is build on the good bones we have already in place with historic structures here. Also acknowledging that this area is growing and trying to make sure we're taking into account those neighborhoods. And Amy, you can keep going to the next slide. So we have this character map that we developed with folks in our charrettes and workshops. And basically the red areas are mixed use commercial districts. The blue is more residential emphasis in nature. And then the light yellow are areas that are, directly adjacent to neighborhoods. So we've got mostly single family homes directly behind these areas. And we want to be more sensitive about height and impacts to those neighbors. And then the blue around Banks and Buxton was kind of an area that was community folks identified as the heart of South Slope and felt very protective over the heights and what the character of that area was. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. You can keep going, Amy. So one of our themes is a unique and inclusive sense of place. And really we're using, part of this theme is to talk about equity. Obviously inclusion is not just about any one particular part of your life. It's how do you feel socially included, economically and politically? Is there a place for you in this neighborhood? So South Slope is growing quickly. As we know, there's businesses opening, new residential developments being built today and will continue to be built. So how does that work within that neighborhood? And also how does it relate to the neighborhoods adjacent? And the South Slope Neighborhood Association, I think, is fairly committed to reaching out to their neighbors, and they're doing a pretty good job on that. So you can keep going, Amy. Strong local economy. Obviously, local business and small businesses are the heart of Asheville's economy, and we really want to continue that in the South Slope. It's been a great business incubator over the past 10, 15 years. And the city has a role to play in terms of, making sure we have enough infrastructure for folks and supporting those businesses. I think if you all are familiar with the Asheville Shares Space initiative that's been going on during COVID-19, our team has worked like on Banks Avenue to have those public spaces in the street, which have been really great. So next. Multimodal transportation. So obviously these are the 4 main goals of this section, and safe, accessible, pedestrian friendly streets, public space and vibrant street life, bicycle facilities, and working with alleys and reducing driveways. That's a big part of Cox Avenue and Ashland Avenue. There's a lot of driveway cuts. Ashland was developed as a suburban kind of thoroughfare, really, frankly, right? That used to be a much more urban street with houses on it. And through urban renewal, most of those houses, or even before, I think to some extent, those houses were removed and Ashland was straightened out. and has become really quite, it's mostly being used for cars and suburban offices. And I think over time that's going to change too. Next. So our transportation staff actually wrote this section of the plan. So Dan Bechtold's in a different meeting. He's sorry he couldn't be here. Lucy's here, and we had other folks really be a part of this. So we have these prioritized transportation improvements laid out. We didn't do this with other sections of the plan, but it seemed helpful for this section. There's a lot of text, and I'm glossing over this completely. So there will be a lot more meat on the bones when the actual plan gets released. So these were the first 5. And you can go next, Amy. I'll talk about a few more of these later on as well. We've got a mixture of big streets and small streets in this area. The South Slope Neighborhood Association is interested in some things that are a little counter to general city policy about, on Collier, they're interested in making that a pedestrian-only street, whereas we don't really want to close off any streets to cars, or having connectivity is important to us. But I think generally everybody agrees we want streets to be safe, just all the things you all have been talking about for the last hour. Next, Amy. Strategic infrastructure and natural environment. Obviously, this is a really important theme for our entire city. This is an example of the green roof, that's near the Aloft on top of the Biltmore Garage Apartments. South Slope is the major, some of you may know, may not, but downtown is basically all drains through the South Slope down to the Nasty Branch Creek. And stormwater, even though it's not a major problem, obviously stormwater infrastructure is important. And if we can reduce the amount of water flowing into the river, I know, but that's what the community wants. So that's the traditional name. So we've left Town Branch behind, and we're going back to Nasty Branch. So, but I will talk a little bit about this in the Cox Avenue piece. But with all the new construction, we really have some opportunities here through energy efficiency and green building to make a difference in our city. Next. So I will stop. I can stop right there, or I can wait till the very end if anybody has any questions about those. Yes.
I was just kind of sitting on the comment you made about the city not wanting to close any corridors to cars. When did that happen?
Well, and maybe I'm overstating. So let me just say, in downtown, in a business district, it can be a little tricky to close a street where businesses are relying on deliveries. And
but in this case, it's a neighborhood that's actually asking for it. I remember when we were discussing the Shared Streets program back when lockdown had happened. There was a quite expansive discussion about closing down streets, and we ended up at the place where we're going to have shared streets potentially, and it was pared down because of business interest that I think you're referencing. But in this case, it sounds like we've got a whole neighborhood of business interests that are saying let's close Collier completely to cars. So why wouldn't we do that?
I don't think that's necessarily true. No, I think a neighbor. I wouldn't go that far to say that all the businesses are on board for that. So,
but the neighborhood association has been on record as saying that that's something they advocate for.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to keep going just to get through this, and then we can come back if you like. So the 10 key initiatives are these smaller, kind of mostly very concrete issues. Some are a little more abstract than others. You can go on, Amy, next. Next. I'm not going to read through these. You can keep next. So the first one is, updating design guidelines and zoning to achieve community goals. Right now, we've got a lot of suburban zoning along Ashland and McDowell, and to some extent on Biltmore as well. Which really, it's a much more of an urban area. And so it makes sense to update the zoning in these areas, and as well as update our design guidelines so that we have buildings matching the environment. Next. This is an interesting area. So in this triangle between Biltmore, South Charlotte Street, and McCormick Place, the city owns, I would say, about half of that land. And it's where our gas station is right now. And there's the Wachovia building right there. And then the Eblin gas station right there at the corner. We are interested in kind of improving the visitor experience to McCormick Field, connecting McCormick Field and that park closer into downtown and making it a more walkable experience, so people can traverse back and forth. And this is just one idea for, potential new housing, maybe business space, and could have some parking that also would help McCormick Field. If you know these neighborhoods, you know that they have long time complained about the amount of people who are parking in their neighborhoods for tourist games or other things. So we were trying to look as a way at this interesting intersection to solve several problems and also provide a new gateway into the downtown. Next. And that, you can keep going, Amy. Those are just some principles for that. The next key initiative is honoring African American history, which a lot of folks has gotten a lot of attention over the last 5 years, I'd say. The South Slope Neighborhood Association is working on that for some murals, but there's also multiple other projects working on that. Next. Weaving art throughout the district. Again, lots of murals throughout the district. But there's also lots of other opportunities if you've seen the Wake sculpture down there in the South Slope. Next. The city owns property in this area and also adjacent to this area. Both the picture on the top left is 319 Biltmore, and the lower right is the South Charlotte Street properties. With the bond passed several years ago, we approached these with a high impact sites initiative and had a consultant do studies of these areas, engage the community, and also do performance for these sites. And it's pretty exciting. The 319 Biltmore project is moving ahead, and we have a consultant working on, a developer after RFP process working on that site for probably about 250 new residential units. And that actually would weave with the new Lee Walker Heights area as well. So it'd be a mixed income community. Next. So as we are, as we're growing and people are moving here to Asheville, and we're kind of in this ongoing affordable housing crisis, and it seems like it's sped up even more in the last year. Equitable development is a strategy that we are looking at citywide, and the comments are really distracting. I'm sorry, if you all could just hold on. Equitable development is something we need to really be thinking about throughout our community. When developments come to council for approval or otherwise, how do they affect the neighborhoods around them? So, next. So this, you all may be aware of this initiative or this idea as a part of the plan, the Banks and Buxton kind of shared streets initiative. The idea being that these are two parallel streets that seem perfect, like the Asheville shared space, perfect to really kind of slow those down, quiet them down, make them more pedestrian dominated, and make cars the less dominant form of transportation through here. There's also an opportunity, to affect the stormwater and how that gets treated coming through here as well. Next, I think I have one more drawing. So this model on the right is not quite finished, but the idea is obviously you would kind of bring out the sidewalks. This is showing losing some of the parking, maybe not all. Parking is always a concern for business owners. So we're trying to balance that, because obviously parking can do good things and bad things in terms of pedestrian safety. Next. Another key initiative is one you're probably all familiar with, the South Side Connector, which is one of the Greenway connectors that Lucy has been working on. Next. Another major idea coming out of this plan is Cox Avenue and a redesign of that, which really calls for widening those sidewalks. We would love to see this be a green street. And if you have this, if you have time on your commute, you can zoom in a little bit, but the idea is you'd have permeable paving, you'd have some of those bioswales or planting areas, which really capturing rainwater before it goes back out into the street and reducing the amount of flow. And our David Hazard, our urban designer on staff, designed this for us. Next. Yeah, so this is just a further explanation of that concept. And really, it's also a placemaking concept, right? So it's not just any one thing. It's both transportation improvement, green street improvement, and placemaking at the same time. Next. And then I think lastly, we want to improve incentives for sustainability, because that's one of the areas that we don't have as many tools as we would like to. And part of that's being in North Carolina, but we're hoping to encourage those. And then next, lastly, just as a quick timeline of where we are. We're working with a graphic artist right now to get this plan together. Planning on releasing it in April with a survey of some kind and explanation for folks, and doing neighborhood outreach and getting a lot more feedback, because it's been a while since we've been out in the community. And we have, in this plan, have addressed some issues that we weren't talking about during the planning process, like more equity issues and equitable development, and want to get folks' feedback on those. So that's my summary. I tried to not be too long, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Thanks, Sasha.
Hey, Sasha, I really liked it a lot. I think there's a lot of great information in there. One of the ideas I was thinking about is connecting downtown to the South Slope. And I think sometimes the inclination is to go with, with a busier street. But maybe we can consider, I think be Lexington or Church, because they're already relatively calm streets. So walking on those just is more comfortable. I walk a lot, run, ride my bike, and those streets I tend to kind of filter over just because I feel a little bit safer. I know that they're getting pretty snug. There's not a lot of room for us to do something, but maybe if we pushed, one side where we have, all the sidewalk on one side or something like that, that might be a great way to make those connections and make that the, kind of our corridor between the two neighborhoods.
Sure, yeah, and I didn't talk about South Lexington is on that list of priorities, and David Hazard also did kind of a draft schematic or design really of South Lexington.
Right.
That angled parking that is there along Lexington Station is really not up to spec. Like, we would not elect, the angle it's at is not right. And so really we could lose a few spaces and go to parallel and be able to widen the sidewalk and make it a better walking experience as well through there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful street, and it already has the green feel to it. It's kind of
Absolutely.
So I really like that idea. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good ideas. I think that's great. I can't wait to see the final project. Michael, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I had noticed that Church Street had some signage at one point when we were doing the Shared Streets program, that it had designated it as a shared street. I don't recall if that signage is still there, but is that something that we want to pursue? If we got any feedback from folks on that corridor, from like Central Methodist, that's where I go to church. I'm just interested to know what the response has been, because just like Lexington, it's also a really nice corridor to get you from downtown to South Slope. I run it on and off, and just because it's so calm.
I'll be honest, we didn't hear a ton of feedback about church. It's a little bit shorter because we really only looked south of Hilliard, honestly. So we did look at, at the end of church, where you've got church and Lexington coming in, and you got that weird no man's land going on in front of the little business shop. We looked at could you, because it's right of way, but we've got some agreement where we're letting people park in the middle of it. And, we had some ideas of creating some green space there and kind of straightening out the streets a little bit and making it a better environment. Those really would depend on city being able to buy property, which I'm not sure is how likely down there. But we didn't hear a ton of comments about church, honestly, but we'll be glad to take them, when we get the draft out, and love to hear.
The only thing I'm just wondering if anybody knew that it was a shared street, other than that one sign that was basically right in front of the bank there and Foggy Mountain. Because despite that, no, I don't think anybody would know. Has any of those entities or businesses been contacted to let them know that there was a revision to the street, that it's now a shared street, and what that means?
So I think that it's, to be honest, I can't remember if it's still signed that way, but I can find out, and I can ask our downtown coordinator, Dana Frankel, if she's gotten any feedback. I know that when we first put that stuff out there, it was by request from, I want to say at least 2 of the churches were wanting to facilitate the shared street there. And I think the nature of Church Street just naturally lends itself to that. And so I think as part of our larger pedestrian plan and bike network planning, we will be looking at Church Street as a great opportunity for that, and potentially keeping it the way that it is now, as a shared street.
Yeah, if anything, it'd be great to kind of buttress that and go a little bit further with signage, because it is a wonderful connection. I often use that just because it's so pleasant to go down that road, especially with the greenery.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Thanks, Michael. Joe?
Sasha, I just had a question regarding those city-owned properties, along Charlotte Street, if there had been any discussion. I know the reparations committee in the city is still new, but if there had been any, I know that the city has been talking about repurposing those city-owned properties. I didn't know if there was any discussion of how far those discussions had gone, given the new reparations committee and that kind of thing, into perhaps the city turning those over as opposed to developing them. So
I see. Yeah.
It may be a too advanced question for this right now. It's kind of.
Well, that's okay. So, the big thing about the South Charlotte Street properties is that we have city services all up and down them, right? And generally, when I have that picture, it's really everything south of Beaumont, which doesn't include the development services building that we studied. And Public Works is kind of bursting at the seams, frankly, and our our fleet maintenance building is at its end of life. And so really to rehouse all that, first we'd have to find a home for all of those things, and that's like 26 acres. And so we've been doing a study. We had a consultant do a service or a space study and studied those buildings, studied what we'd need, looked for land. And so that's still, I don't think that's quite completed, but it's getting near completion. So finding that land and moving all those things would have to happen before reparations or not. I've always thought of that property as this amazing opportunity to reconnect East End Valley Street back to downtown. And I would think that reparations would play some kind of role in whatever happens, whether or not it's, however it got disposed of or changed. In the
Thanks.
future.
Yeah, I knew it's a kind of a bigger discussion because of that. You have to find the place to move, fleet maintenance and everything like that. And I know the discussion revolved around, well, then maybe does the bus garage go there? And it's a big, huge question. I was just kind of curious.
Yes.
How far you all went down the rabbit hole yet?
All right, any other comments? Well, thank you very much, Sasha. That was outstanding. We appreciate it.
Sure. I guess my last, to get the last word in, but now I'll just say that when we do release this, I'd encourage you all to take part in any surveys or feedback mechanism we have. And I will definitely Jessica will know when that happens, and we'll let you all know. So
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you. Next is unfinished business update on I-26. It looks like Ken.
Yes, I'll be glad to do that, and I'll present my screen. And hopefully you're seeing the memo that you've got in your packet as well. Does everybody see that?
We are.
Yeah, because I can't see you all now. I'm just looking at this piece of paper. This is the update that I'm furnishing you is the most current update that we have at this moment in time. And it's come about because of the recent budget shortfalls that the DOT has been experiencing. And you may have heard about that in last fall when they actually went below the minimum cash threshold that they're supposed to keep on hand, and they had to halt all projects and that sort of thing, but they're climbing out of that and they're doing much better on that. So there's 4 sections of the project known as the I-26 Connector Project. There's section A, B, C, and D. And section A is on the first bullet, and that's the one that's moving the quickest right now. And it's from I-40 up to just south of Haywood Road. So that includes the Brevard Road intersection or interchange, and also the Amboy Road interchange to kind of give you a sense of where it's at. The right-of-way for that one is scheduled in June of 2022, and the construction let will be February of 2024. And this project will be done by the traditional design bid build method. That means the design will be complete, it'll go out for bids, the successful contractor will then build it. So that's the way the vast majority of projects have been built over the years. And in parentheses, I'm also telling you that the municipal agreements that will have to be signed between the DOT and the city, they would be due on August 2023. The second section is B, which is south of Haywood Road and goes all the way up to Broadway Street. And that's going to be done by a design build method, meaning that the plans won't be totally finished when they go out to find a consultant / construction team to finish the design and build it. Examples of a design build is the interchange project over Brevard Road and I-26 right near the Fred Anderson Toyota. That's a design build project. And the interchange that's existing down at Long Shoals Road, that was a design build project. That means that this team will take the project, if they're the successful contractor, and they will finish the design. They will be then tasked with building that section, and they'll do it for one lump sum price. And that means if they finish it with less money, that means they get to keep that money. If it takes more money, they have to furnish that money. And then the section C, excuse me, and that the right-of-way and construction letting date on that is October of 2023. And that will be the same timeline for section D, which is Riverside Drive from Hill Street to Broadway Street. So those 2 sections, B and D, will be let together. And then the last section is C, and that's the I-40 interchange improvements. And that right-of-way and construction let date is June of 2029. And then the other piece of information is the record of decision, which is known as the ROD, is now being reviewed by the FHWA with the Federal Highway Administration, and they anticipate it being finalized during April of this year. And the important significance to that signing is when the record of decision is done, that paves the way to move forward to the construction phase. That's the last step that has to be taken on any project to then allow it to go to construction. So with that, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? So the rework of the Patton Bridge, that's external to all of this effort.
Which bridge?
Sorry, the current two
Jeff Bowen bridges, the Jeff Bowen bridges?
Yes.
That's in section B.
B, okay.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest section. That's the most expensive section that'll be undertaken.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, Randy, yes, please.
So Ken, the important part is for us, right, is that all this is taking place. It won't be signed until after the complete streets ordinance, statewide ordinance have been updated. So anything it touches of any of the projects that we have on our books for multimodal will then be incorporated into their construction projects, right? I'm trying to look at the good part of it for this group is that we'll see some then improvements, like at the Ambrier Road interchange, how they, we'll be able to get to the neighborhoods on the other side of the freeway, as where now you can't get to them, for example, things like that, because they'll be affected by the construction and that they have to then comply with the complete streets, right?
Yes, that's a very good point, Randy. And we did get verification. The NCDOT updated their complete streets policy in August of 2019. And so we were well underway with the designing of this project, obviously by then, but we got the assurance that complete streets policy, that updated one, will be applicable to this project. And so the good news about that is, under the old policy, to give you an example, if we wanted a sidewalk on the road, they would be glad to do it. But due to the size of our city, we would have to pay 40% of the cost of that sidewalk. Now, the good news of that is, and you might say, well, why do you have good news when you got to pay money? The good news is the cost is figured on only the cost of the concrete that's used to build the sidewalk. So in our case, that $40 or that 40% works out to be like less than $10 a running foot for a 5-foot sidewalk, which we can't take that same money and build it ourselves for that. So that was a very good deal for us. But now with the new updated policy, as long as a sidewalk is identified in our plan, which we're updating, if the project comes in, then the DOT recognizes that, then they'll put the sidewalk in at no cost to the city. If it turns out that there's a road that they're going to do, we don't have the sidewalk in the plan, which in our case, that would be very few of those, so that's not going to really happen. But then our cost would only be 15% instead of that 40%. So the updated policy is definitely good, and it's going to make it better, not only for Asheville, but communities all across the state from that standpoint. The other thing that the DOT is doing, and Dennis kind of mentioned this on a project a while earlier in the meeting, when DOT does a project now, they are making sure that there is a standard 10-foot berm behind the curb, so that later on you can go add a sidewalk if you wanted to and not have to worry about adding retaining walls or extending a pipe because it's not wide enough. In our case, the DOT recognizes that we typically want to see a 5-foot sidewalk with a 5-foot utility strip. So we would still pay extra for the 1 foot to get an 11-foot berm. If we wanted to wait and not do the sidewalk, then we'd be able to do it later. But I can't see any reason why we would delay that. But that's still another positive thing the DOT has started doing that's not necessarily in their complete streets policy.
Excellent.
So that's a good point.
Michael?
Yeah, I love the complete streets policy. I think it's fantastic. That update was wonderful. My question is what is the likelihood that sticks with us if the governor's mansion were to change hands politically? You know, if all of a sudden just, we had a Republican in the governor's mansion who didn't think kindly of multimodal, concepts, does that policy go out the window?
Michael, I don't want to put anybody on the spot here. I think, political speculation is a very difficult thing for us to put these folks in position.
It's not political. I wonder how set in stone is that policy? Because these projects we're talking about go out. You mentioned 2029.
Yeah, and I think Michael, I can answer it without a political bias. How's that? To give you an example, I can remember a time when the DOT was not very receptive to roundabouts, and it took years. And I can say this because, and I don't know if all of you know this, but I actually retired from the NCDOT, so I've got a history there. But I can remember the time when a roundabout would never be considered. Now it's one of the more common things in many cases that is first suggested to solve a problem at an intersection, because especially the single lane roundabouts have proven to be very successful throughout North Carolina because they eliminate all left turns, which is the time taker from a traffic signal. And then it's also reduced crash history significantly, and it's virtually brought personal injury crashes to zero. Now, multi-lane roundabouts are still done on a case-by-case basis. Some work and some don't. But I'm using that as an example to say that I think other multimodal transportation ideas that are still evolving and coming on board, and even recommendations from groups like NACTO, they're finding their way into the DOT world all the time. And I think it's just going to continue to get better. It's going to continue to solidify. So I don't personally ever see those things going away. It still may take more time than we would all like to see them all come to fruition. Does that help, Michael?
It does. It's I really appreciate that. I know it's a touchy question, but it is something I've wondered about. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Ken? All right, Ken, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to this one as well.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to bow out now if that's okay.
Absolutely. Take care. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, next up in our unfinished business is the update on the Greenway Pedestrian ADA Transition Plan, the GAP plan from Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, everybody. I hope you can hear me. We went back and forth this month trying to decide if we should bring our consultants in to talk with you this month or maybe wait till next month. And we decided, obviously, that we were going to wait till next month, but that I would give you a quick verbal update on where we're at with the plans. Like most plans, we spent the first few months, maybe more, gathering all of the data that we needed for us to be able to do just cursory analysis. And I can say that our consultants are just pretty amazing at doing that. I don't think that they've left a rock unturned. We've got so much data right now. It's just amazing. And the city of Asheville has asked for Strava to provide us with the information they have for the city of Asheville as well. North Carolina DOT bought the Strava information, so I do not foresee any problems getting that, but we haven't gotten it yet. But that is also going to be adding to a lot of our decisions once we have that in our toolkit as well. As you can imagine, our timeline has been pushed back with COVID. I would say that we're probably 6 months behind where we want to be. We wanted to be finishing up right around now, but it looks like we'll probably be in the fall that we'll be finishing up. But we have gotten over the first big hurdle, which was gathering all that data. We're starting to look at it. Our consultants created a really great survey, which I hope you all took, and a lot of people did. We got almost 1,600 responses for the GAP survey, and I think we got 150 responses just for the ADA specific survey. They're still compiling all of the information, but from what we've seen, we've got a lot of information that we can work with, and our goal is to get a preliminary plan done sometime by late May, possibly by your next meeting, or early June. And what we will be doing with that information is creating a preliminary plan that we can show to the public and to our stakeholders, such as you, so that we can start fine-tuning it. Also in the survey, we asked some pretty important questions like, how would you feel about paying some additional penny tax that would be put towards our pedestrian network, including greenways? And we got great feedback from that. About 80% of the people said that they were in favor of paying extra. And the average amount that people were willing to pay in penny tax was 1.75 pennies. So that will be great information to show council. Also, about 80% of the responders were very fired up about the Asheville Unpaved plan that we're working on, which is the natural surface network that we're trying to achieve with partners in the city. A side note about Asheville Unpaved right now is that we just signed an agreement with Asheville Unpaved, Pisgah Sorba, and Connect Buncombe to do a concept plan. We'll be hiring a professional trail builder called Elevated Trail Designs to do this concept plan for us. And Cake Graphic Arts is going to be making a logo for Asheville Unpaved so that we have tools to be able to do some focused public engagement on the Asheville Unpaved. The ADA section of our plan, we haven't done anything new since the last time we spoke, but I wanted to remind you that the goal of that plan is not to create a map that shows us where we have issues with our ADA facilities in the public right away. We know they're everywhere, and but we are focusing on how to manage it from this point on. So we spent time this summer training different departments in the city of Asheville and also some construction community members on how to make the ADA facilities correctly, how to inspect them and find out if they're done right or wrong, and for people who do plan reviews to be able to see them before they're even the construction even starts. So I know that moving forward, we're going to feel a lot more confident about how we address ADA issues in Asheville. And that data that I was talking about that we developed, we've pretty much put it into two baskets. One is for destinations, so we know where people want to go. The obvious ones I'll just list are like grocery stores, parks, schools, churches, but it's a very long list. And then the other basket that we're working with is our equity data so that we can be able to weigh those types of issues in our prioritization and weight them a little bit more. So that destination score plus an equity score will create that one score that helps us push our plan and help us find what our priority projects will be. All of this information we gave out last week and the week before to our two stakeholder groups. One is more of an internal stakeholder group working with predominantly City of Asheville departments, but also with the county planning and parks and recreation departments, our MPO and the DOT. And the second meeting was our citizen action committee, which was more organizations that are not in the government realm and individuals who have been great stakeholders for us, and pretty much the same information. And today, Christy Carter from TPD recorded that presentation, and as soon as it is available, we will be putting it on our project page so it's available to everyone. And I will make sure that you all get that link so you can see it. there'll be a downloadable version of it too, because the maps, while still cursory, have a ton of information for those of you that really like to geek out on that stuff. And if your May meeting seems to be the best time for us to bring in our consultants to talk with you in more detail about this, we will. If not, it'll be June, is my guess. And that's my update. If you have any questions.
Thanks, Lucy. Any questions on this topic? All right. I think we are all just anxiously awaiting the plan.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lucy.
Okay, the next item is the bike share plan. Jessica, you know, kind of recap that.
Sure. So we it feels like decades ago, I'm sure, to a lot of folks that have been around, but a couple of years back, there was a great effort put into creating a bike share plan. Towards the end of the creation of that, the city added e-scooters to that plan, and then everything sort of halted because we had a lot of issues with e-scooters going on, and it unfortunately caused everything to sort of grind to a halt. And so in talking to the chair and the vice chair at our pre-agenda meeting a couple of weeks back, there was an interest in trying to get back on the path of the bike share piece of it in particular. And so I am not going to really recap everything right now. I wanted to provide all of the latest information, or the most recent information, including the draft plan and what was given to the Multimodal Commission back in 2019. So it's been quite a while. And all I'll say is that I encourage you guys to take a look at that, and then we will work to resurrect this plan. And I think likely what will happen is we'll focus again just on the bike share piece. There still continues to be lots of changes in the micro mobility world. I think if we can get to a place where we've got a draft bike share plan, and hopefully be in a position to at least know what we'd like, may not have the funding for it. We do expect there to be some infrastructure funding in the future. And so the hope would be that maybe we can get to a place where we'd have a chance at utilizing some future infrastructure funding for it. So when you have some time, I know you guys all have busy lives, but take a look at those resources and we'll pick the conversation up again.
Great, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of good information in there, and I think it was just, as you said, just something that we can kind of, for me, I wasn't involved back then, so it was really good info to understand kind of what the direction it was, and we'll kind of revisit it very soon.
Real quick, Dennis, Jessica's, and this is kind of maybe more for the people that weren't around during that discussion. We still, or I should say, the city of Asheville still has a ban on scooters, correct? And that includes all kinds of scooters, even ones that you own yourself.
Yes, unfortunately, in my opinion, yes, that is the case. I think that if we were to resurrect the e-scooter conversation, my suggestion would be to have a conversation about whether there's an opportunity for personal ownership and use, since that's really already happening, and separating business operations of e-scooters versus, Joe Archibald having his own e-scooter and using it as he wishes. And so I think if there's a desire to explore that, that's probably, I'll just say it will definitely be less controversial than whether or not we should have bird and lime and all of those flopping around on our sidewalks and such. That was sort of the thing that made everything grind to a halt.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to just bring that up as yet another thing for the people, on MMTC that weren't around for the whole big discussion that we had about bike share, e-scooters, the whole bird lime fiasco that happened. And I saw Maggie kind of being like, what? Huh? So, yeah.
Leave for 2 years and everything changes.
Yeah, I will not try to do the rule justice, but I know that there's a ban on e-scooters in the city, and that is personal business no matter what, and that has to do, and Jessica can correct me, it's kind of one of those, like, they couldn't do a ban that was just private companies. It had to just be a blanket none because of, legalities. So anyway.
Correct.
Excellent. And some of that's the docking and free range and all that kind of thing that we'll get into in this issue. So there's a lot of it's a dynamic challenge for us, no doubt. Next issue is the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021.
Sure. I will probably be able to give a much more thorough update at our next meeting on this, but I just wanted to let you guys know that the American Rescue Plan Act was, of course, passed, I think, probably about 3 weeks ago at this point. The city is expecting to receive money, and we're expecting to receive quite a bit of money. Some of it is, very specific, like for transit, for example. There's also some that's going to be coming through CDBG, which is, Housing and Urban Development Funds. But then on top of that, there's also local governments and county governments are getting direct allocations from, for COVID relief. The city expects to receive in just that local government kind of generic pot about $26 million, which is, I think, more than they even received in the last several stimulus bills. There are restrictions on that, and we're still waiting for some further guidance from the Treasury and other agencies on specific criteria or specific guidance. But what I can tell you is that it has to be related to COVID. It has to be related to either revenue loss that was incurred because of COVID, or COVID response, or impacts that the community felt from that. So, we will probably, I'm guessing the city will first be focusing on offsetting revenue losses. But then outside of that, we are going to be looking at opportunities for what to do with whatever is remaining that can benefit the community as it directly relates to COVID, either, impacts that have either been felt up until now or that we continue to expect to see. Additionally, in the bill, there are separate pots again for things like rent relief, utility relief, things of that nature. So we're still trying to get a handle on the cumulative amount of funds and what all of the different pots will be and what the specific rules for each will be. But we're all very happy that we have this coming to us, and then there's probably going to be lots of community conversation and council conversation about how those funds will be spent. To talk real quick about transit specifically, so as you know, we had CARES Act money for transit, about $3.68 million. We have blown through that already. We are using savings that we have from our transit fund to continue to spend related to COVID, specifically on our young transportation contract. Now that we know that we are going to get some money again for transit, and I'll talk about the amount in a second, we'll likely use what we know we're going to get to offset what we're spending from our savings right now. So we expect to get, as a region, about $4.25 million for transit. And as in comparison to the CARES Act, our region got about $8.6 million. The city of Asheville's cut of that was about $3.68 million. So the amount that our region is going to get with this next round is smaller, $4.25 million. There are some important distinctions between this bill and the CARES Act that it's possible that the city's cut or proportion of that regional allocation might be larger. And that is something that will be discussed and eventually decided on by the Metropolitan Planning Organization Board. So they're basically the clearinghouse, if you will, for the federal transit funds. And we will be meeting with all of the organizations that are a part of the MPO to discuss how that funding will be allocated for transit. The distinction between this current bill and the CARES Act was the CARES Act bill for transit, it didn't have a whole lot of rules. It said, yes, this is primarily for COVID, but if you want to spend it on other stuff, you can for transit. And some of the sub-recipient agencies like Hendersonville and Madison County and Haywood County that have smaller transit systems, some of them shut down, some of them just severely cut service. They really didn't have a whole lot of expenses related to COVID, and they still don't. And so the money that they got from the CARES Act, they're using to buy new buses and things like that. This time around, it has to be spent related to COVID, and it has to be spent by December 31st of 2024. And so we're preparing to make an argument that the city of Asheville, which continues to have significant expenses for transit related to COVID, should get a larger cut of those funds from this coming up allocation. And so I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. We'll be working with our council liaisons that are on the MPO board, and we'll be having discussions with the other transit agencies in our region to try to come to an agreement that the city should get a larger percentage of the next round of funds for transit because of our greater need, if you will.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts there, but yeah, we definitely look forward to the resolution. Next up is the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit.
I have nothing on that item to share at this meeting.
All right. Anyone else care to? Okay. Yeah, Randy.
So just real quick, the reason why it's on the agenda though is because we want to make sure that we keep this forefront in our mind, that it's moving forward as much as we possibly can. So it'll just stay on the agenda each month until we get progress. So we're not expecting always there to be an update, but we want to make sure that we don't let this slip off the agenda.
Perfect. Okay, next is we're going to go into the committees. Transit committee, we have our routine reports, very detailed reports. Everyone's checked out. Is there any highlights that we want to pull out of there, transit committee folks?
We did not have a meeting this month. With the meeting, there's one scheduled for next Tuesday, and then they moved it to April. So we'll have one in 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Jessica, do you have any top line stuff that you wanted to add by chance?
I don't think so.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Greenway, we did not meet in anticipation for an excellent meeting that's going to happen coming up in a couple of weeks, couple of days. Bike ped task force.
Yeah, so at Bike Ped, we had a couple things we talked about. It was a productive meeting for sure. We talked about there's a new People for Bikes rating system. So there's the League of American Bicyclists rating system, which we're a bronze level city. And now there's a new rating system done by People for Bikes, which is more of an industry funded advocacy effort. And we ranked really low in it. So we're analyzing the criteria in which they ranked us. And then we're going to use some of that criteria to set some new targets in terms of how we can improve our bikeability. We talked a lot about the Merriman issue, which we did here as well. And then we also talked about, gave some input to the city staff on the Charlotte Street proposed development near Chestnut. They want to reconfigure the roadway there to include some parallel parking. And so we were able to give some good advice, I think, about how that wasn't necessarily a very good idea that they were proposing, and why specifically it wasn't very good. And if they want to do that type of thing, we had some criteria in terms of which we want them to relay to us to justify why they want to do that. So good stuff.
Excellent. Thanks, Randy. Joe, planning and zoning?
We didn't have a meeting this month. There wasn't anything on the agenda, so nothing there. Although I will, as Randy was mentioning about the Charlotte Street one and about, parallel parking and that, again, UDO.
Agreed. We have an update from the Neighborhood Advisory Committee.
We didn't have a March meeting. We'll have our retreat that was supposed to happen in 2020 at our next meeting at the end of April.
Excellent. We have an attachment for the I-26 Aesthetics Committee. Anything we want to talk on that, Jessica?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect. We have the list of projects that's attached as normal. We have our list of future agenda items. Please note those if you want something added. Just encourage input, and we'll have a conversation and get something added. Next meeting, April 21, same time, same channel. Randy, yes.
So actually, I think the meeting should be the 28th, shouldn't it? Because it's usually the fourth Wednesday, and that's the 28th.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's the 28th.
Yes, stand corrected. The 28th will be the meeting. Excellent. Any other comments?
Well, I guess I would just say, since we agreed to schedule that meeting with DOT, it would be awesome if we could have that before our next MMTC committee meeting so that we could give them an update at that time, since this is a summer award. So, Jessica, when you're chatting with the city manager's office, that would be a priority I would request.
Right. Yeah, we can do that.
Great. That definitely sounds like that's going to happen. I look forward to that information as well. Thanks, everybody. Without any other comment, we're adjourned. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dennis.